And welcome back to the Michael Cohen Show on our continued journey to 500,000 subscribers. Help me to get there. Join the community, subscribe, watch, comment. Keep those comments coming and share with your friends because, look, when I say the stupidity never ends, the constitutional violations don't end either. Now, on Thursday, the Supreme Court actually heard oral arguments on the birthright citizenship issue, which centers around Trump's executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship, which allows U.S. citizenship to children who are born in the United States. By the way, it's in the Constitution. Here is what the AP said about these oral arguments. In it, they turn around and they say, the Supreme Court seemed intent Thursday on maintaining a block on President Donald Trump's restrictions on birthright citizenship while looking for a way to scale back nationwide court orders. It was unclear what such a decision might look like, but a majority of the court expressed concerns about what would happen if the Trump administration were allowed, even temporarily, to deny citizenship to children born to people who are in the United States illegally. Now, meanwhile, Trump then, of course, posted this on his Truth Social post on Thursday night in response to that hearing. In it, he turns around and he goes, the radical left sleazebags, which has no cards remaining in its illegal bag of tricks, is, in a very coordinated manner, playing the ref with regard to the United States Supreme Court. They lost the election in a landslide and with it have totally lost their confidence and reason. They are stone cold crazy. I hope the Supreme Court doesn't fall for the games they play. The people are with us in bigger numbers than ever before. They want to make America great again. Now, let me turn around and say the following. There's nothing in that post that resembles anywhere near something called the word truth. Okay? The Republicans, the Democrats, they have no control, or they're not supposed to have control over the Supreme Court. And the fact that Trump is putting this out there, obviously he's sending this message to those Supreme Court justices who feel one way or the other to side with Trump. The point of the matter is, he knows that what he's doing is unconstitutional, and so did the Supreme Court justices. Now, one post, of course, just wasn't enough for him. So he posted this on Friday morning saying, and I read, the Supreme Court is being played by the radical left losers who have no support. The public hates them, and their only hope is the intimidation of the court itself. We can't let that happen to our country. I mean, you got to laugh if you start to turn around to say, well, what's he talking about? The fact that they filed an action in order to prevent an unconstitutional interpretation via an executive order? That now turns around and they're talking about support and that they lost the election. He's all over the place because he doesn't want his executive order, like so many of them before, to be torn up by the courts. That's why he also wants to do away with the courts. Now on CNN, Representative Jared Moskowitz, never one to shy away from the camera, he made the interesting point that we are living in a time where Justice Scalia, Antonin Scalia, is considered woke. Play that clip.
Man, I mean,
so good.
Yeah, you don't have to be a lawyer to hear the kind of like, are you serious? And in his voice there, in Kavanaugh's voice, because yeah, how are you not going to know?
Yeah, I love when the administration makes Kavanaugh reasonable. I mean, look, this hearing was somewhat of a mess for the administration. I mean, and it's weird, like we live in a time when Antonin Scalia, right, the late great Antonin Scalia he's woke. I mean, he's clearly on video saying the Constitution says persons, doesn't say citizens. And if you listen to Amy Coney Barrett, she could not believe the administration's position when it comes to, not adhering to lower court rulings. They kept saying generally adhere. And she said, what do you keep saying generally? And he said, well, that's been longstanding DOJ policy that we generally will adhere to a lower court ruling. And she said, really? And so it was a fascinating hearing. I don't think it went well for the administration.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the
Yeah, I mean, it did not go well because you're trying to fight something which is in the Constitution. It is written there, and it has already been interpreted more than once. Now, I want to show you a few clips from the oral arguments. You can't make this stuff up. Trump's Solicitor General, John Sauer, admitted to Justice Brett Kavanaugh that Trump has no idea how to actually enforce his birthright citizenship executive order. Play that clip.
On the day after it goes into effect, this is just a very practical question how this is going to work. What do hospitals do with a newborn? What do states do with a newborn?
I don't think they do anything different. What the executive order says in Section 2 is that federal officials do not accept documents that have the wrong designation of citizenship from people who are subject to the executive order.
How are they going to know that?
The states can continue to, the federal officials will have to figure that out.
How?
So you could imagine a number of ways that the federal officials could.
Such as
they could require a showing of, documentation showing legal presence in the country. For a temporary visitor, for example, they could see whether they're on a B-1 visa, which would exclude kind of the birthright citizenship in that country.
For all the newborns? Is that how that's going to work?
Again, we don't know.
No, damn straight you don't know. And you shouldn't even have to know. I have a better idea for you. Why don't we start creating some styrofoam boxes, right? And as soon as the kid's born, why don't we just put them on, I don't know, dry ice or something and ship them back to the embassy in the country of origin? What about that for an idea, John? Meanwhile, Justice Elena Kagan, by the way, just so you all understand, I'm joking. Justice Elena Kagan asked Sauer why he brought this case to the Supreme Court when they keep losing. Play that clip.
It sort of depends on the government's own actions in a case like this one, where one can expect that there is not going to be a great deal of disagreement among the lower courts. I mean, let's assume that you lose in the lower courts pretty uniformly, as you have been losing on this issue, and that you never take this question to us. I mean, I noticed that you didn't take the substantive question to us. You only took the nationwide injunction question to us. I mean, why would you take the substantive question to us? You're losing a bunch of cases, this guy over here, this woman over here, they'll have to be treated as citizens, but nobody else will. Why would you ever take this case to us?
Well, in this particular case, we have deliberately not presented the merits to this court on the question of the scope of remedies, because, of course, that makes it a clean vehicle where the court doesn't have to look at the past.
You're ignoring the import of my question. I'm suggesting that in a case in which the government is losing constantly, there's nobody else who's going to appeal, they're winning, it's up to you to decide whether to take this case to us. If I were in your shoes, there is no way I'd approach the Supreme Court with this case. So you just keep on losing in the lower courts. And what's supposed to happen to prevent that?
Nothing. They're just going to keep doing it because they don't care. And they're hoping that they get a positive ruling. Simply, I mean, even Brett Kavanaugh, who was appointed by Trump, could not go ahead and just acknowledge this executive order, this unconstitutional executive order. Well, another appointee of Trump, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, she clarified if Sauer plans to respect lower courts' opinions and orders. Imagine a Supreme Court justice has to ask the Solicitor General if they plan to respect lower courts' opinions and orders. Play the clip.
Opinions and judgments here. Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
Our general practice is to respect those precedents, but there are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice. And that is not
this administration's practice or the longstanding practice of the federal government. And I'm not talking about in the Fourth Circuit, are you going to respect a Second Circuit? I'm talking about within the Second Circuit. And can you say, is that this administration's practice or a longstanding one?
As I understand it, longstanding policy of the Department of Justice. Yes, that we generally, as it was phrased to me, generally respect circuit precedent, but not necessarily in every case. And certain some examples might be a situation where we're litigating to try and get that circuit precedent overruled and so forth.
Well, okay, so I'm not talking about a situation in which, the Second Circuit has a case from 1955 and you think it's time for it to be challenged. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in this kind of situation. I'm talking about this week, the Second Circuit holds that the executive order is unconstitutional, and then what do you do the next day or the next week?
Generally, we follow those.
So you're still saying generally?
Yes.
And you still think that it's generally the policy, longstanding policy of the federal government to take that approach?
That is my understanding.
Okay, but it sounds to me like you accept a Cooper versus Aaron kind of situation for the Supreme Court, but not for, say, the Second Circuit. Like where you would respect the opinions and the judgments of the Supreme Court, and you're saying you would respect the judgment, but not necessarily the opinion of a lower court.
And again, I think in the vast majority of instances, our practice has been to respect the opinion as well, in the circuits as well, but my understanding is that has not been a categorical practice in the way respect for the precedents and the judgments of the Supreme Court has been.
So you're not hedging at all with respect to the precedent of this court?
That is correct. I believe the quotation from our application directly addresses that, and we stand by that completely.
Okay.
Look, you got to be clear about something. Regardless that Trump is the one who appointed both Kavanaugh and also Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, they're smart. I mean, they really did their homework on this one. Now, lastly, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson stated that Trump's government is like a catch me if you can government. Play the clip.
Let me just turn your attention to one other thing, because the real concern, I think, is that your argument seems to turn our justice system, in my view at least, into a catch me if you can kind of regime from the standpoint of the executive, where everybody has to have a lawyer and file a lawsuit in order for the government to stop violating people's rights. Justice Kagan says, let's assume for the purpose of this that you're wrong about the merits, that the government is not allowed to do this under the Constitution, and yet it seems to me that your argument says we get to keep on doing it until everyone who is potentially harmed by it figures out how to file a lawsuit, hire a lawyer, et cetera. And I don't understand how that is remotely consistent with the rule of law. A system, and I appreciate that you go back to English common law and the Chancery Court, but they had a different system. The fact that courts back in English Chancery couldn't enjoin the king, I think is not analogous or indicative of what courts can do in our system, where the king, quote unquote, the executive, is supposed to be bound by the law. And the court has the power to say what the law is. And so one would think that the court could say, this conduct is unlawful and you have to stop doing it.
Look, if this doesn't urge you, to help to grow this platform into a force that they can't ignore, I don't know what will. Because here, we're not building just some sort of random episodes. We're building a movement, one that's loud enough, sharp enough, and relentless enough to push back against the lies and to hold the corrupt to account. Because this group of grifters, these liars, these power-hungry con men, this is what we're going to get. A man who actually doesn't think he's president, but thinks he's king. And that's why they're going back to common law. We need to make this stop. So please, share with your friends and help to build the movement. And as always, thanks for listening. Hey everyone. First of all, thanks for watching. I mean, we're going to be posting daily episodes with reactions and talking about politics. We'll be talking about everything, in fact. So please like and subscribe. Join us on this journey.